YouTuber, there's different types of content you can do. Super original content that's super hard to find, or take everybody else's ideas and see if you can get the same amount of views. Today, I'm going to be stealing not an original idea. Today, I'm going to stop and rank all 9 DCEU films from my least favorite to my favorite, because Wonder Woman came out recently. Before I give you guys my thoughts, let me know your guys' ranking down in the comments below. Which DCEU film do you love? Which DCEU film do you hate? Which one is more in the middle? Let us know our thoughts. So without further ado, let's get into it. Coming in last place, I have Justice League. This movie is a studio-made film. Nothing in this film was made by a person. Nothing in this film was made by a people with a defining vision. This film was made by a studio. The action sequences were conceived and constructed by a studio. The story, bland and simple, so it's probably made by a studio. The characters, ruined by a studio. The movie's runtime, botched to 2 hours when originally this film was going to be 4 hours. The decision by a studio. Warner Brothers used a tragedy that Zack Snyder had to step off the project due to a family tragedy and used it as a bonus to take him out of the project and bring in Joss Whedon, the man who made the first 2 Avengers films for Marvel, to try to cap on the success that he made 2 really good films for Marvel and see if he can make a really good coherent film with Justice League. But the thing is, he didn't, because this film is so terribly written. The pacing of the film is non-existent, and the editing is absolutely horrendous. Scenes don't even really end. There's not even proper progression of scenes, and the film doesn't really have an ending either. It just kind of just abruptly ends. So I'm hoping when the Snyder Cut comes out this year, I'm hoping it properly feels like a working film and actually scenes feel like scenes and scenes just kind of flow. In this film, scenes kind of just happen. Also, they changed the color correction from more dark and gritty and real world to super colorful, so it makes the film look really polished and fake looking at a lot of times. And there's so many characters that were completely ruined because of a studio. This movie is just a studio botched mess. Coming in 8th place, I have David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Now, I think this is a very enjoyable film. It can be entertaining, it can be fun, but the moments that are fun don't last very long. The cast members are good and quirky and have a lot of sense of humor to them, but the film at times, why it does have some sense of humor, the film is awfully serious. And yeah, this film should have a serious tone, but I feel like the film should have balanced humor and seriousness more than it actually did. The cast members, for the most part, are pretty good, especially Margot Robbie and Will Smith as Deadshot and Harley Quinn, but they're given really bad writing and a really planned and boring storyline. Enchantress is just a plain and boring and just terrible villain, and Warner Brothers, being another brilliant idea from the studio, decided to hire the editors that edited the trailer because it got good views on YouTube. So the film is not really edited in a way that's appealing. Big over-the-top colors and neon lights to try to make the film feel like stuff is happening. The action sequences aren't necessarily bad, but they're overly edited and pretty simple and plain. Also, the film really has no stakes. Only one character dies, and it's a character that was not in any of the promotion, Slipknot. So you're kind of, if you have a brain, you can figure it out that that's the character that's gonna die. So I'm hoping James Gunn this year can bring in a really good Suicide Squad film. Coming in 7th place, I have Wonder Woman in 1984. This film is fun. It's dumb fun, but it's a dumb fun mess of a film. The story of this film might be the worst story, maybe. It's so convoluted, it's so messy, it's so jumbled. There's so many things in this film that the world doesn't even explain that this is what happens. The Dreamstone is a messed up object that doesn't even explain things in a right way. The characters are fun, and the action sequences, when they're there, are pretty exciting, but the lack of action makes the film quite boring at times. The second act is just not interesting. Diane and Steve just going through different artifacts is not engaging. The final fight between Cheetah and Wonder Woman is awful, and even the villains are extremely lackluster. Maxwell Lord is an over-the-top idiot at a lot of times, and Cheetah doesn't have much character development, and the character development she does have is laughable. I can watch this film and be entertained, but I cannot argue it's a really great film. Coming in 6th place, I have Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, the start to the DC Extended Universe, but it wasn't meant to be the start of the Extended Universe. If you don't know the story and backstory around Man of Steel, let me explain. When Nolan was making The Dark Knight Rises back in 2011, a writer or producer came to an idea to Christopher Nolan that he had an idea for a Superman film. He told Christopher Nolan, and he loved it, but he's like, I don't really want to make this. So he sent the idea to Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder made it. Nolan produced it, and then the film came out in 2013. This film was not made to set up a universe. There's no hints, there's no nudges, there's no end credits. This was just made to be a dark, more serious, more grounded take of Superman. And as a grounded take of the Superman character and as a film itself, it's pretty solid. As a superhero film, as a Superman film in general, it's truly horrendous. There's so many moments in this film that I can say are really good, but then the next scene will kind of ruin it. That's this entire film. It will have a good scene, then a not so great scene. It will have good writing, and then terrible writing. Okay action, and then it'll just go on for far too long. The first hour of the film is actually pretty actionless, just setting up characters and being more serious, dark drama. But then by the second act, we're just bombarded with tons of action sequences that just go on and on and on. So you're just kind of numb into all this noise. Zack Snyder is a director who loves to make visuals over story. He's kind of like Michael Bay. Even though I would say Zack Snyder is a far better storyteller than Michael Bay, but they're very similar in terms of style. Michael Bay loves to make action sequences, and he loves to make visuals, and he puts a lot of time in making these visuals look as good as they can. Same with Zack Snyder. But when it comes to their stories and their characters and their writing and trying to make a coherent plot that makes sense, that is not their number one concern. When you're instructing a film and when you're instructing a screenplay, what should be your number one priority? The story is good and the characters are investing, and then you work on the visuals or the action sequences or whatever is the exciting part of your film. That should come after you get good characters and you get at least a coherent story that an audience can get engaged by. That's what Nolan does better than these two directors, and does better than a lot of directors working today. He makes a coherent story. He works on a story for years and years on end. Inception, he spent 10 years making sure the story was coherent and made sense enough, and he could explain it to himself and explain to a crew what he was going. 10 years before he even started on directing or writing Inception. I feel like if Zack Snyder or Michael Bay directed Inception, they would spend about a couple months trying to get the general idea, and then they would just want to get to visuals. That's what my problem is with Zack Snyder. He's so keen on making visuals and action sequences, and for the most part, he's really good at it. But at a time, the action sequences just go on for far too long. And when you get to the finale, it's just punching and explosions. It just gets tiring and really boring at a lot of points because you don't care about the action sequences. And also, he didn't even take time to make sure the characters are interesting. Even Superman. Henry Cavill's a great actor, and I feel like he didn't have much to show with Superman because he wasn't given much. He's just a brood for half this film, and when they try doing humor, it doesn't work. It feels out of left field. Lois Lane is a pretty dull character as well. General Zod is basically a screaming idiot who has motivation, but you can't really get to understand why he's doing it in a way that you can connect with. The music is also pretty disappointing. Hans Zimmer is one of my personal favorite composers, but this score feels not existent. It feels really boring and bad, and it doesn't really fit with the film. So I gotta say, this is overall a okay movie with some good visuals. The look of Krypton, I think, is really good, but overall a mess of a film. Coming in 5th place, I have Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. The extended cut of the film adds very vile 30 minutes of the film takes it and places it perfectly into this movie. Without it, it's a boring, bloated mess of a film. But with the 30 minutes, it explains things more. You get more of Clark Kent investigating the Batman crimes. You get more of Batman, more of a lot of things. Kind of like Man of Steel, this movie looks gorgeous. The performances are, for the most part, pretty great. Ben Affleck is great as Batman, besides that he kills people. But besides his body count, he looks like Batman. The sound is great. The muscle strength, the suit, all of it is great. Henry Cavill is okay as Superman. Jesse Eisenberg, I'm not a big fan. And Gal Gadot does a really good job as Wonder Woman for the first time in the film. The story, for the most part, the first act is a dark crime drama. By the time we get to the second act, and by the time we get to the third act, it turns to a superhero mess. The fight between Batman and Superman, I think, is really great. It's a bit too short, and the Martha moment is absolutely horrendous. But besides that, it is really good and strong and really compelling. This movie is trying to be too much of things. It's trying to be a Man of Steel sequel. It's trying to be Batman v Superman. It's trying to be the setup of the Justice League. And then, if that wasn't enough, we gotta bring in the death of Superman, probably the most famous Superman comic of all time. Then we have all these other plot lines about Batman wanting to take down Superman and Superman wanting to take down Batman. That's good conflict. It sets up the fight between Batman v Superman. But Superman isn't in this film that much. After a building explodes, he kind of just goes into hibernation, talks to his ghost dad, and then goes to try to confront Bruce to help with this situation. So it doesn't really line up. Jesse Eisenberg's plan is convoluted and doesn't make a lot of sense. And Doomsday is just kind of blown into this film because he needs to be in this film. It doesn't work. It's not convincing. The final fight is just over the top and bland. Wonder Woman's why good and cool is just kind of shoved in there for just fan service. The film at times is drawn out for too long, and the extended edition, why really good, could have took some things out, and the film itself could have took some things out that weren't really good, and then should have kept the 30 minutes that were really good. There's some things that didn't need to happen in the extended cut, like the guy that Batman brands just gets shanked in a prison. That is pretty brutal and dark, and the extended cut being R-rated makes absolutely no sense. There's an added F-word, which PG-13 films can get by with one of those, and a man gets shanked in prison, but they don't really show much, so I think this film could have easily got by with a PG-13 rating. This film I really do enjoy, but there's so many dumb stuff. But for the most part, the action is stellar. The warehouse fight is brutal and great. Batman is great. Besides, he kills people. And the film is overall a pretty fun time. Coming in fourth place, I have Shazam. A great movie about family and choosing where you need to be in the universe. Zachary Levi is great as Shazam. Jack Dylan Grace is also great. The entire cast is pretty much stellar. Besides Asher Angel, the villain is really fun. The comedy, for the most part, works. My main problem with the film is the tone. The film is a bit tonal consistency. Some of the jokes don't really land. But back to that tone. The tone is all over the place in this film. We have lighthearted comedy, monsters ripping off people's heads, lighthearted comedy, our main characters entering a strip club. There's so many moments like that, and the monster moment I think is really cool. And darker elements in kids' film is, in my opinion, what makes kids grow up with films. The strip club thing is a bit weird, and there's some jokes that don't really land. The action is pretty lackluster and weak. I find the finale to be really disappointing and lackluster and goes on for too long. I do like when the family turns into the Shazam members, and I cannot wait to see what they do with Shazam 2. Coming in third place, I have Aquaman. James Wan did a great job bringing the Aquaman character to life in full. This movie has the best visuals of the DC extended universe. The action sequences might be the best or the second best. They're long, they're wide, they're extensive. The final fight is so over the top. This film is so dumb, but yet dumb fun. They went all out for this film. There's so many over the top moments where actors are just chewing scenery, and in another comic book film or just another film, that would seem like the most out of place and dumbest thing in the film. But if the entire film is like that, it fully goes for it. The film isn't great, though. There are some dumb moments, some inconsistency, but overall, this film has some great other moments, and the trench sequence is dark and horror aspect. Jason Momoa is great. Amber Heard is not good in the film, and I don't like her as a person or an actress, but that's a subject I don't want to go into. The villain is pretty cool. Ocean Master seems like a pretty over-the-top villain, but he fits the style. This entire film is just a dumb, fishy type of fun, and I just enjoy this underwater blend of ridiculous. Coming in second place, I have Birds of Prey in the fantabulous anticipation of one Harley Quinn, or they should just title this film Harley Quinn. This movie is great. It's really great. There is some problems with the film. I found some of the humor not to work, some of the fourth wall breaking not to be as connected as I wanted to, and some of the team up moments not being as strong as I think they should be. But the plot is simple and small scale and fun. Ewan McGregor is great as Black Mask, and he's actually pretty scary, but yet funny. The film is R-rated, so it can go all out with its action sequences, and I didn't think the film really needed to be R-rated, but it's still fun and kinetic, and it still has that energy. And this film is just such a fun film. The action is brutal, long takes, and this film is great action because it has the stunt coordinators from the John Wick film, so they know how to do action. The story is small scale, and what I love so much of this film is we can just focus on these characters. We're not worried about what's happening in the world. We can just focus on this story affects these group of characters, and it works so well. But coming in first place, I have Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman from 2017. It took a long time for me to truly appreciate what Patty Jenkins did with this film. Yes, the third act is dumb and doesn't really fit. The villains are lackluster. The final fight, a CGI mess. But the third act does have some good stuff, like the sacrifice of Steve Trevor. It's emotional, it's heart-wrenching, and the rest of the action sequences are stunning, great. The trenches, the experience, the way Patty Jenkins throws you into this war sequences, the trainings set, the movie is gorgeously shot. The film's dark when it needs to be dark. It's funny when it needs to be funny. It's exciting when it needs to be exciting. It has heart when it needs to have heart. It has sweet and emotional moments when it needs to, and this film is perfectly paced. It is one of the more longer DCEU films, kind of, but it flows perfectly. Yes, that third act is quite bland and generic, and yes, sometimes the film is a bit bland, but what this film does and how it perfectly places its characters, and the film kind of has an in-the-world situation, but it's just focused on these men and Diana and how she's learning how to adapt into this new world. The fish out of water humor. Normally, I don't really care for fish out of water humor in films, but this one truly works. There you guys have it. That was my ranking of all 9 DCEU films. What do you think of this? I'll tell my thoughts down in the comment section below. And if you guys like this video, you're going to want to see more videos of me talking about comic book movies and nerd culture and just movies in general. I do run a podcast I do every other Tuesday with a friend of mine. It's called the Movie View Podcast, and you guys can check out my Instagram at JohnOscarDaniel77. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. General out.